All right. Well, we are back. I apologize to everyone who was logged on when we started this originally. We had to restart the computer, and there was no way that I could stop it, so I apologize. Now, let's get to talking about frogs and toads. I'm just going to restart for sake of clarity, just from the beginning. So, hello. My name is Davis. I am an AmeriCorps here at the West Valley Outdoor Learning Center, and I am going to be talking to you about frogs and toads. Now, frogs and toads are one of my favorite animals, or some of my favorite animals. I studied biology in college, and I really enjoy weird and interesting animals, and I think that these guys kind of fit the bill. So, let's hop right in. Before we can talk about frogs and toads, we have to talk about what they are in a greater sense. So, frogs and toads are amphibians. This is a class of organisms called amphibia, which all frogs and toads belong to. So these are typically animals that are found in aquatic habitats. So that means that they are water-based and not necessarily like an ocean habitat or something like that. Oceans have salt water and are often too big. We need something a little bit closer to shore, so that it has some land capabilities, and then we need fresh water too for amphibians to be happy. So, then additionally, in these aquatic habitats, amphibians typically have what's called a larval stage of their life, where they have to undergo a metamorphosis before they become an adult. The larval stage typically takes place entirely in the water, and we'll talk a little bit more about that a little later. Now, while most amphibians do live on land, at least part of the time, there are some that must stay submerged for their entire life. One of the defining characteristics of amphibians is their skin. So, amphibians have glandular skin, which means that they are able to secrete substances from their skin, and they also have what is called a cutaneous, their skins are semi-permeable, which means that they are able to perform cutaneous respiration. Now, cutaneous respiration means that they are able to breathe through their skin, and this is actually taken to the extreme in some examples, with some organisms having no lungs at all and breathing entirely through their skin. This semi-permeable skin that these organisms have makes them very reliant on water for survival. But as there are many, or as always in biology, there are always exceptions. And those that live in extreme climates, amphibians that live in extreme climates, will have special adaptations that allow them to survive in drier areas. Now, frogs and toads, being amphibians, are carnivorous. They are also tailless, and they fall under the order Anura, which literally means in Greek, without tail. And they make up 88% of all amphibians on Earth, which is crazy that an order makes up that huge of a section of a class of organisms. They are well adapted to live on both land and water, and are well known for their unique locomotion in that they hop instead of walking. And then they're also known for their ability to vocally communicate through chirping, croaking, and singing. Now, if we move on here, where are frogs and toads found? So amphibians are found on every continent except Antarctica. Again, being reliant on water for survival, Antarctica is too cold for them to survive. They will literally freeze to death, but in the sense that they will turn to ice because they're made of so much water. There are some other places that they are not found, such as the Sahara Desert, because even with special adaptations, it is simply too dry for them to survive. So we typically find frogs and toads in wet areas. Like I said, there are special cases where we would find them living in deserts, or maybe on the sides of mountains that don't typically get a whole lot of water, but we're mostly going to, but we mostly see them in forested areas or wetlands, places where we see a lot of constant rainfall and precipitation. Now, getting into frogs and toads, let's talk about their life cycle. So frogs and toads have a multiform life cycle whereby they undergo metamorphosis. So this is the organism changing to fit its needs at that stage of its life. So in this chart that is right here, we can see that, I'm going to back up a little so we can see the whole thing. We can see that a frog starts by laying eggs. Now, frogs and toads are a little bit different in this case, but it's pretty much the same. Frogs lay clusters of eggs, while toads lay usually a chain of eggs, and these are going to be underwater. Again, with some exceptions, there is a species of toad, for instance, that carries eggs on its back instead of laying them in the water. And there's another species of tree frog that lives in the Amazon rainforest that lays its eggs on a leaf of a tree above a pond. So the eggs will develop for a short time, and then they will hatch into what is called a tadpole. So tadpoles are kind of just a head with a little tail, and they will hatch and swim to a piece of grass or vegetation underwater and hold onto it with their mouth while they develop a little bit more. And this just helps them hide and stay safe from predators. Now, once they have developed a little bit more, this takes several days, they will develop external gills. So these are gills like a fish has, but they are outside the body instead of inside. Some people think they look like funny little ears or hairdos. So over time, the tail of the frog or of the tadpole will extend, and eventually they will start to grow back legs, and the body will start to take on kind of a frog shape. We call this, these are called froglets at this stage. So they will just have their back legs. Now, as the back legs continue to develop, we will see the tail start to shrink. It's getting absorbed by the body. Eventually, they will start to develop little front legs and will continue to lose their tail pretty much until we see them fully reabsorb the tail and look like our typical frog. Now, they will also, during this whole process, be losing their gills. Even frogs that live entirely underwater lose their gills and will just come up to the surface to breathe air. Once they have right before they've entirely lost their gills, they will start to breathe air by coming to the surface and taking breaths. And then this process is pretty much the same for frogs and toads. Now, let's talk about frogs specifically. What are frogs and why are they important? So right here, I have two examples of some frogs. These are both a species of tree frogs. Now, frogs typically have longer legs than toads. This is because they rely more on hopping than toads do. Toads kind of waddle around, but frogs like to hop. They also typically have larger eyes. If you look at these two right here, you can see how large the eyes are in proportion to their body size. Compare that to our eyes, which are pretty small compared to our body size. Now, this helps them hunt. They are voracious hunters. And being able to see their prey is very advantageous to them. It also helps them escape predators. Frogs also have very smooth skin compared to toads, and I'll talk more about toad skin in a little bit, but that is because frogs spend more time underwater and need to be able to swim fast. So the smooth skin makes them hydrodynamic, makes them very slippery under the water. And then finally, their skin is wet. So frog skin, if you've ever picked up a frog, they are kind of slimy. And that is because their skin contains a lot of water on it. And this again helps them be very slippery underwater, and it helps keep them hydrated when they're outside of the pond. Now toads, on the other hand, we have two examples of toads here. So toads are frogs. Not all frogs are toads, but all toads are frogs. It's one of my favorite sayings. Toads have shorter legs than frogs, and like I said, that is because they don't hop as much. They kind of waddle around. They also are more likely to be organisms that dig, that burrow. So we see that. They also have smaller eyes, and that is because they act more like opportunistic hunters instead of ambush hunters. So toads will eat whatever walks in front of them. A frog will actively seek out its prey. Now, they also have bumpy, dry skin. So their skin is much more sealed, is a good way to put it, than a frog skin. Frog skin, like I said, is very wet. Toads don't spend as much time in the water, so their skin is drier to contain more of that moisture. Their skin also is unique because it is poisonous. So while there are many frog species that are poisonous, there is a defining characteristic of toads is that every species is poisonous. So that glandular skin allows them to secrete. It allows them to secrete toxins directly onto their skin, so that if something were to eat them, it will hopefully either spit them out or not eat them again, so that the species lives on. Now, if you happen to find yourself near a toad or frog, you should always make sure you wash your hands after handling it. Frogs and toads typically do not pose much of a physical danger to humans, in that they're not going to bite you or inflict like physical harm. But because you can't really know if it's going to be poisonous, you want to make sure you wash your hands with soap and water after handling them. Now, let's talk about some examples of frogs. So first, right above me, right here, is the northern red-legged frog. Now, these guys are really cool. They get quite large. They can get up to, about 6 inches long. And they are very, very cool. They're very fast, and they do not like being around humans. But these guys mostly live deep in the forest. They don't necessarily go to water unless they have to lay their eggs. Then we have stuff like the coastal tailed frog. So these frogs are unique. They are found in Washington, by the way. I should have said that. All of these species are common in Washington. The coastal tail frog is unique because they never fully metamorphize. They actually have a tiny vestigial tail, which scientists believe are used for attracting mates. Next, right here next to me, we have the Oregon spotted frog. These are kind of your typical frog. They are spotted. They're about 3 to 4 inches long, and they make a very distinct ribbit sound. Then finally, we have the Pacific tree frog, which is also called the Pacific coral frog. Now, these guys are tiny. They're about 1 inch long, and they live way up in trees, and they love to sing. If you live in western Washington especially, and you go out at night and you live near a forest, you're probably going to hear these guys singing. They love to sing and are very, very loud. Now, let's talk about toads. So, there are not as many toad species in Washington. Toads typically prefer a little bit drier climate, and Washington is pretty wet, so we don't have that many species. But these are just some examples. So first we have the one I'm standing in front of right here, is the Great Basin spadefoot toad. So these guys are unique because they're very small for toads. They're only about 3 centimeters long. I think they're kind of funny looking too. Then we have the western toad, which is this guy right here. So these are pretty common in Washington. They are 2 to 4 inches long, and they make a very, very distinct croaking sound. And then finally we have Woodhouse's toad. Now this is very much a toad. If you look at it, you're going to be like, that's a toad, that's not a frog. They're very cool, and they're very bumpy. They're very fun to catch and look at because they are so unique. They're pretty big. They're about that big. But these guys, you really want to be careful because the toxin that they contain, or that's on their skin, can cause pretty quick irritation on your skin pretty quickly. So you want to be careful around them. But it's not dangerous. It's just going to be like getting poison ivy. Now, a frog that I really want to mention is an invasive species of frog. This is the American bullfrog, all of these pictures right here. Now, American bullfrogs are an invasive species that are actually native to North America, just not to the West Coast. They actually were originally found on the East Coast and have since been brought over here in various number of ways, and have kind of taken over. Now, this is because they are able to outcompete other frogs. They have a voracious appetite and they reproduce really fast. So they are able to kind of take over an ecosystem where frogs are in. Another problem with this is that they cause imbalance in ponds and lakes because the tadpoles are enormous. Bullfrogs on their own eat a lot. They can get up to 8 inches long and are very aggressive towards other frogs. They will even eat other frogs. The tadpoles can get up to 5 inches long and eat way more food than native tadpoles and then kind of outcompete them. They will also eat native tadpoles. Fun fact, my brother had a pet bullfrog whose name was Vert Wheeler Rainbow Comet. So if you ever are looking for inspiration for your bullfrog pet name, there you go. Now, let's talk about the conservation and importance of frogs. So, frogs and toads fill a special ecological niche. We call them primary predators, which means that they help to keep both herbivores and apex predators populations in check. So they sit right here, the second to highest level on the pyramid, on this trophic pyramid. And again, that is because they serve as a major food source for primary predators, or for apex predators such as eagles, different things like that. Large fish, apex fish. And then additionally, they eat a lot of herbivores. So they eat insects that eat plants such as grasshoppers, cicadas, things like that. And then they also will eat other small organisms, small fish, all kinds of things that can quickly get out of control if they're not there. So that is actually why they are so important. If you have frogs in a habitat, you can be pretty certain that that habitat is healthy. This is because without the frogs, the habitat will start to get a little wobbly. The ecosystem will start to get a little unstable. So they are very important. That's probably why they're so common on Earth. Major damage can occur without them. And because they're so widespread, their impact is very noticeable if they go away. So, now if you want frogs in your pond or in your backyard, there is a way to attract them. I love frogs, and once I get my own house, I will definitely be building one of these. But this is a simple guide to building a small frog pond in your backyard. So, building a frog pond is one of the best ways that you can help your local ecosystem, especially if you're in Washington. With all the urban development that has been happening, and concrete getting poured and wetlands getting torn up, there's not a lot of places for these organisms to go. And frogs are also unique because they will roam. They like to roam and find new ponds. So it's very easy for them to find a place to live in. And then again, because they're so important to our ecosystems, that's why we kind of want to build areas that they can go safely to. So to build it, they are very simple and dirt cheap. All you have to do is get like a plastic tub, like one of the big ones you buy at Walmart, and put clothes in or put Christmas ornaments in that you take out once a year. You want to get one of those, take the lid off, and then you want to bury that in your ground so that it's about surface level. And this is just going to help contain the water. Then you can add rocks and sticks and water plants to it, and then just add water, and in a couple of weeks in the spring, you will almost certainly start to see some frogs. Frogs explore very frequently and very rapidly. They also reproduce very quickly, so it's easy for them to find places like this. And if they like it, they will stay. And then they will help keep the insect population in your backyard in check. So they will also not only do they eat herbivores, they also eat things like wasps, flies, things that we don't really like to have around. Let's see here. So, frogs and toads are probably one of the coolest organisms I know about. They are super unique, and they just have like a really funny energy to them. They just kind of make me happy when I'm around frogs and toads. They're very interesting. They eat the bugs that I don't like wasps and mosquitoes, and they, the way they move is just it's really silly, the hopping around. So, as you can tell, I'm very enthusiastic about frogs and toads. Now, I'm gonna wrap this up. I know that today was a little funky with the beginning, so I'm sorry about that. But I want to plug our open house that we have this weekend here at the West Valley Outdoor Learning Center. Its theme is Marsh Madness. Now, if you live in Spokane like me, you're definitely excited for March Madness because of the Zags. For Marsh Madness, we are going to be having some tournament-inspired games relating to wetlands and marshes where frogs like to live at the Outdoor Learning Center. So this is this coming Saturday, the 19th, and it starts at 10 o'clock and goes until 1 o'clock. It is totally free to join us here. We do recommend a donation of $5, but it's completely not necessary. You are free to bring as many people as you want. It's going to be super fun. We are going to have lots of games and prizes and all kinds of cool stuff. We'll have our raptors out and some of our other animals out to meet and hang out with. We are located at 8508 East Upriver Drive in Spokane, Washington, Building B. It's the little red building. And you can call us or email us to find out more. You can also go on our Instagram and Facebook to learn more details about these things. There are more detailed posts that include all the information I've already talked about. And then if you are wanting to rewatch this stream or watch other streams that we have done in the past, please check out our Facebook page. It's just West Valley Outdoor Learning Center on YouTube. Check out our YouTube page. Just look up West Valley Outdoor Learning Center on YouTube and you will find us. And then finally, we have a TikTok. It is run by me, and I am mostly just posting silly videos of the antics that go on around here while trying to keep it educational too. So I would love to see some of you there with us. So thank you all for joining us. Again, I apologize about this morning, and hopefully we will see you guys again at our next Facebook Live next month, and we will see you this month at our open house. So I'm going to log off here, and yeah, goodbye.